Welcome to Disrupting Japan, straight talk from Japan's most successful entrepreneurs. I'm Tim Romero, and thanks for joining me. I've got a special bonus episode for you today. Even when I'm away from the Disrupting Japan microphone, I'm frequently on stage talking about startups and innovation in Japan. Last month, I moderated a panel discussion at Coral Capital's Bilinguals and Gaijin in Startups event. Our panel focused on what foreigners should expect when working for Japanese startups and what Japanese startups can do better to support their foreign employees. It was a great conversation with four amazing people from four of Japan's most interesting startups. We had Sawanobori of Connected Robotics, Jordan Fisher of Zehitomo, Takanori Sato of Shippio, and Tatsuo Kinoshita of Mercari. Now, longtime listeners are going to know a few of these names, and future listeners are going to hear from a couple more of them. But for today, this is a bonus episode. So the recording is straight off the board. There's no editing, there's no transcription, and there's no clever summary at the end. But there is a lot of good information here, so I really wanted to share it with you. If you've ever thought about working for a Japanese startup, I think you're really going to enjoy this. Before we get into the discussion, let me introduce myself, and we'll have everyone introduce themselves very briefly. But hopefully by the end of our brief panel discussion today, you'll have a little bit different perspective on how to find a job at a multicultural startup in Japan, or if you are a multicultural startup in Japan, how you should be better recruiting. So to kick things off, I'll just briefly introduce myself. My name's Tim Romero. I run a podcast called Disrupting Japan. It's we sit down, we talk with Japanese startup founders, and we talk not so much about their company, but what it's like to be an innovator in a culture that prizes conformity and their day-to-day struggles. And I view it as a lens, it's a way of looking at Japan through the lens of startups. And that's me. So let me throw that down to Tatsuo.
Yep. So can I introduce myself? Is clear enough? Okay. Yep. Okay. So my name is Tatsuo. I'm from Mercari. Let me introduce myself briefly. I started my career in Procter & Gamble and HR in Japan. I'm growing up in Japan and educated in Japan and joined the Procter & Gamble, which is a multinational company. That's why I was forced to use English. And then I joined the GE in the HR career. I spent 17 years in the HR, in the HR field. So last 4 years, I was in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. I was in the Asia HQ role covering all Asia Pacific countries as a HR leader. And then I decided to came back to Japan, and I decided to join the Mercari December last year. The Mercari, the reason why I just decided to join Mercari, because Mercari is a kind of in the when the company was launched, there is a clear mission going to the global. So to create a global marketplace where anyone can buy and sell. And now it's doing business in the Japan, US, but kind of would like to expand more countries, and I really would like to help this company's growth, not just only for Japan, but for the international. So that's myself. Thank you.
Jordan?
Hey everyone, my name is Jordan. Jordan Fisher, co-founder and CEO of Zehitomo.com. So my background very quickly is I grew up in the US, born and raised in New York, went to college out in California, studied computer science. All my friends, when I graduated in 2008, went off to Silicon Valley, which is where everything was happening at the time, but I was weird and I came to Japan, worked in finance for around 8 years, both as an engineer, as a project manager, as a sales trader, across a number of different roles. And 3 years ago, worked with my co-founder and we launched Zehitomo.com. We first announced it in July 2017, and since then have been growing pretty rapidly, doing our Series A, raising around $5.5 million to date, and doing hopefully our next fundraising later this year as well. So our team is around 30 people right now, still relatively small maybe compared to Mercari, but but we've started figuring out our HR structures and how we're going to grow and have a pretty aggressive plan. What we do is we are a marketplace for local services. So all the jobs that happen offline, finding your personal trainer, your pet sitter, a photographer for this event, anything where you're connecting with somebody offline to get a service done, so we call local services, and we see it as one of the largest, most fragmented and non-transparent sectors in the consumer economy still today. So we're set on bringing it online, leveling the playing field for freelancers and small professionals, making it as easy as other e-commerce. So thank you.
Excellent. Tez?
Hi, my name is Tetsuya Sawanobori. I'm from Connected Robotics in Tokyo. We are innovating kitchen tasks by robots, and we are a robotics company. At the same time, we are a food service industry company working for restaurants and also for homes in some project. I studied robotics in university and grad school, and when just after I graduated grad school, I started restaurant business because I was raised in a small but cozy restaurant owned by my grandparents. So I wanted to have a nice restaurant of my own. But I worked for a restaurant company and worked like 100 hours per week, and I was so exhausted, and I came back to a robotics company, and I've been working for robotics about 10 years. And 2 years ago, I started this business to make it easier for workers in restaurants by robots cooking and helping other kitchen tasks. And so we are fortunately growing very fast, and we are attracting more and more people, but we really seriously need more engineers. So if you are a robotics engineer, please feel free to come to talk with me. Thank you.
Excellent. Taka?
Hi, hey everyone. My name is Takanori Sato. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Shippio. Shippio is tackling to digitalization of freight forwarding business. Since I used to work for Mitsuya & Company, which is one of the biggest Japanese trading and investment conglomerate for 10 years. And right now we have 12 people as a full time, and we raised around $2 million last year, and as a pre-Series A, and now we are, let's say, on the way to Series A.
Excellent. And what I think is interesting here is I don't think we could have gotten 4 more different types of companies up here. In fact, about the only thing that's in common is that everyone up on this stage is trying to be multicultural and trying to get multicultural teams to work together. So I want to start things off with what is probably the very first question you get asked when talking about how to manage multicultural teams. And that's, do you have an official language, or do you prefer that each individual teams communicate in the way that they want to? And Tatsuo, I know that, Mercari is big and multinational, but just in the Tokyo office,
Yep.
What's your policy for that?
Yeah, so actually, we recently discussed about this, with the management team, and right now, we have a 10% non-Japanese ratio for the Japan office, and in Roppongi office, we have more than 200 non-Japanese, by the way, and basically, in terms of hiring standard, we don't require bilingual, so you can speak either English or Japanese. So that's the general discipline or operating principle or recruiting standard, right? But what happened is, after we have 200 people, what we are doing is, we are using many of the interpreters to fill the gap. And then we found out, it's good for temporary base, but not for long-term or sustainable solution, right? And then we started providing, language training for both sides. So kind of our policy is, let's find out the middle, right? Okay, Japanese speaker need to learn English, but also non-Japanese speaker also learn Japanese. Okay, let's find a way to communicate without interpreter.
But do you leave it to the individual teams to kind of decide, like, all right, this group of 10 people seems to be most comfortable in English, so we'll let them. Yeah.
Right. So,
All right.
so what we have decided is like become like a Rakuten, like asking everyone to to use English as an official. But we decided, let's identify which groups need English communication or which positions need English communication as a default. Then let's make a timeline. Okay, let's give 1 year. For the team, we decide to use English, and then let's make 1 year and let's make the best effort to catch up so that everyone can speak in English. So
All
that's
right.
we are we are on the way.
Excellent. Jordan, you guys started out with as like foreign founders. So I'm curious, did you sort of end up doing it the other way? Did you start out in English, and what was your experience?
Yeah, so as our team has grown, we've realized that there's obviously a lot of really bright engineering talent that doesn't speak Japanese in Japan, and there's also a lot of excellent salespeople that don't speak English in Japan. And given that we're going after a very domestic market, but we're trying to take more of a Silicon Valley approach and style to it, we thought that the most important thing was our culture, not the language. And so we use both English and Japanese in the workplace, but we have one culture and one shared mission. And I think that's a much harder thing to bridge. On top of that, obviously, we do have things. We have like a no allergies policy, so you can't have eigo alergi. You can't be allergic to Japanese if you don't speak the other language, so that there's nobody, not afraid to speak with somebody else. And we take that pretty seriously. We also do have, like one of our perks is, we offer all sorts of local services, and so people have, like Ichiman a month that they can use on different local services and trying professionals. So some people do use that for language lessons. Other people use it for different things. But we're very strict when it comes down to kind of performance and numbers, and less strict when it comes down to the spoken language, as long as they can work within the team effectively to do the job.
So for company-wide meetings and company-wide announcements, all that's bilingual.
So the engineering teams, so within engineering is primarily English, within sales is primarily Japanese, and then the teams that straddle between those marketing and operations are kind of both. But for a company-wide, we'll usually have the written text in the opposite language of the spoken text.
All right. That's interesting. Tez, how about you? Are you using, so it's a lot of software engineers, particularly like business software engineers, tend to come from abroad. But I've noticed most Japanese robotics startups tend to have a lot of Japanese, they have a primarily Japanese engineering workforce. Has that been the case with you guys too?
Oh yes, since we are robotics companies and other robotics might be the same, we have to negotiate with other companies to make things. But in software, we hire a lot of foreigners from abroad. But as a hardware engineer, they have to talk with customers and partners and other members a lot. So they have to speak Japanese. Japanese. But as a software engineer, we require just good command of English. And I usually put more emphasis on Japanese to speak English. Otherwise, they don't learn English and don't try to speak English. So some of our members don't speak English very fluently, but they are learning. They are learning now. That's a good thing. I hope everyone to learn something very passionately. So that's I think good thing.
So what about the other way? Would you hire a English-speaking engineer who didn't speak Japanese at all, or do you sort of want everyone to be able to meet in the middle?
Well, as I mentioned, as a software engineer, we require just English skill. But yeah, but usually as an engineer, we require both English and Japanese skills.
Makes sense. Taka, what's been your experience?
Okay, so we are like same as Zehitomo, we have a pretty like mixed culture. We don't have the clear language policy, but we use 50% Japanese and 50% English. But about developers and product, our CTO Ugo is coming from France, and he leads the product also. So the product team is basically run by in English, like 100% English. Yeah.
But most of your users Japanese?
Yeah, user Japanese.
But the product team itself is run in English.
Yes.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Somehow, yes.
Is that yeah? So you did. Well, actually, I mean, I'm sure that was not that wasn't an obvious choice to be. We're going to put an English only project team in charge of a Japanese, a product used by Japanese customers. So you can't just put a bunch of people in a room and expect it to work out. So to get to the point where that was functional, where that was really working, were there any kind of processes or onboarding that you figured you had to do to make that work?
Oh, sorry. What's your point? Sorry.
No. So, for example, you have to give. Did you have to provide special training to get the different groups working together well? Did you have to provide language instruction? Were there any kind of special?
Yeah, before we did, we provide like Japanese and English class kind of before starting the business day. But right now, I don't know why, but we just stopped that kind of training. But that still, team can run in English.
Okay, so it really just sort of happened naturally then.
Yeah,
that's great.
I'd chime in maybe just a little bit.
Yeah.
So I thought, Tez had a really interesting comment on the kind of hardware engineers versus software engineers. And I think there's a lot more software engineers that speak English more comfortably, partially because a lot of the documentation, other than maybe Ruby on Rails, one of the reasons that's still used here so heavily is that it had a lot of Japanese documentation. But, in our case as well, we have a heavily English-speaking product team, and it's because we're using a relatively modern stack. We're using full-stack JavaScript, and the majority of the documentation online, et cetera, is in English, and a lot of the people that then use that in Japan, it's a smaller percentage of Japanese. So, I think there's different ways to bridge that, but I think that, the customer-facing element of it is different from, say, the hardware engineer, or in our case, like our growth marketing team, or our sales, or where the requirements are coming from. And so we just need to make sure that we have the right kind of project management structure, that our team is enabled to actually work with and talk with our users. We've done some things where, for example, right now trying to translate some live streams that we have of feedback, just so that the engineering team can kind of get more of a sense of what the users are actually thinking. So data is a great point, but we also have a lot of feedback that comes in the form of text.
How do you handle, and this is more of a general question, because I think all of you are going through it. So if you have an English-speaking product team that's serving a Japanese client base, how do you get that product team talking to your clients who presumably don't speak English?
See, that's why you have to have the bilingual teams in between. So our growth team that drives a lot of the things that we're building out from an SEO or from an infrastructure side, our UX person needs to be Japanese to work with the team and be bilingual. Our project managers need to be bilingual. We're hiring for bilingual product managers. But
you'll get your chance to pitch later.
Yeah, we recently started the agile development process. And every team, every product team has a Scrum, right?
Right.
And then when in the Scrum, we need bilingual talent to bridge the gap, because usually the marketing guy or product guy are more Japanese people and less English fluency, but the engineering people definitely English environment, right? More engineers, more English speakers. Yeah.
So
but
most of your Scrum meetings have a kind of dedicated interpreter there, or is it like one member of the team is kind of drafted into being
it
the
can be both.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on the level of the English fluency. Yeah, and also the other thing is documentation is definitely much easier, right? For the Englishnization. So we force, okay, every product team, in terms of the product development related documents must be in English. So that's, kind of, we have a set of the rules, starting recently actually. but that's easier to do. The other thing is, Mercari used to know all the town halls, like official communication is Japanese, run in Japanese, but interpreting to English, speakers, like 10% of the population, right? But we realized, using interpretation is not the easy thing, right? It's a bit painful process, right, for English speakers. So okay, let's have a English session. So for especially any HR related sessions, when we introduce some of the benefit things, we definitely have a English session with English in the Q&A. We can address more concerns. We can answer the question more clearly. So that we really value the using the English direct communication.
So rather than a bilingual one, you have a separate one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So an interpreter. Well, I really want to get your opinion on this because you have much more of a formal HR background than anyone else up here on stage. And so do you think the most important key to success for this, it sounds like it's mostly setting up the company structures correctly to facilitate that communication, but are there anything that you sort of critically have to do during the onboarding process or the hiring process to set expectations for engineers that are coming on?
Yeah, I think it's not only related to the nationalities or language speaking, but I think the most important thing is how we can make sure every new hires really understand the mission of the company and also culture of the company, right? So in Mercari, we have 3 set of values, which is go bold, all for one, be pro, very simple. But these are the common language using for evaluation or for making any decision within the company. So these are the very specific principles we rely on. So how we can make sure regardless Japanese or non-Japanese, understand the culture and also guiding principle, and then we can share the value. So that's I think the most important thing.
Okay, that makes sense. Tez, what's been your experience? Has it been the team sort of naturally came together, or did you have to take certain steps and certain policies to make this actually work out and make these multicultural teams work efficiently?
In that sense, in your company, most of the foreigners in your company are very young, in their 20s, so they can easily get together very well and go to a gokon. It's a meetup, and I found that there's a it's a kind of meetup. I found a common character in them that the foreign robotics engineers almost always like Japanese subculture, like Japanese anime.
Oh, okay.
So in that sense, they can talk easily about Japanese anime, like Dragon Ball or some other animes. I don't know.
So it's just a certain type of person is attracted to this job, so it makes it easy to create that culture.
Yes. I'm quite sure that almost always the engineers of robotics like Japanese anime or robots in Japan.
Even more so than other engineers.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, we've been talking a bit about what we've done right and what people should do. But for fun, I want to flip this around and ask about the biggest mistake you've made and what you learned from it. And more importantly, what everyone else can learn from it. And Tatsuo, you and I were chatting about this a bit beforehand. I'd love to start with yours on this one.
Well, thank you so much.
No, not that it was that big a mistake. It was a good mistake,
it's
a
a
beneficial
learning
one.
process,
Exactly.
Right? So Mercari has 6 years history behind, and there's so many try and error, right? And I think one of the mistake we made is we hired lots of people from overseas, especially people from India, like a new graduates, like IIT. And it's a company's decision. Okay, we have a mission to go global, and then we definitely would like to have more people from outside Japan. And IIT seems a very nice talent pool. Okay, we go, and initially, the hiring target is like, okay, trying like a few or like a 5, and then 10, and become 20, and then hired 30 actually end up. And it's quite global decision without experiencing, without understanding what it means to hire those fresh new graduates from India, and then just made the offer to more than 30 people, right? We almost without thinking seriously as a go board, right? But what happened is, okay, after we offered, of course, they ask so many questions, right? And then we realized, okay, we need some sort of process to support their onboarding, especially, of course, not only visa, but also, okay, how they can make a life, right, in Japan. And of course, they need to find somewhere to live, and they need to okay, how they can fund like a shikin rekin, for example. So there are so many local things needed. They need support because they don't have any living experience in Japan before this offer. So that's a big life-changing things for them, and also it's for us. We didn't have any process at all, and we couldn't create it from scratch after we offered.
Oh, so the big shock was not so much absorbing them into the company and into the company culture, but teaching them how to live a life in Japan and all the things that exist outside the company.
Yeah, so that's part of it. But also, of course, supporting how to live in Japan is part of it. But also, how to make professional life in the Japanese working environment. That's also the next step, right? So, and then because of the learning, okay, we created a kind of special kind of training group within the engineering functions. Only really focusing on the people from overseas, hired people from overseas, and they really helped, not just only a programming, language, skill development, but also how to work, right, as a professional. So that's very basic things, but we need that because there are many of the people are without working experience, so they need more detailed support rather than experienced hires.
So in the end, are you still hiring as aggressively overseas, or did you kind of scale back?
Yeah. We had now capability to support, but we also realized it's a huge effort and needed from both sides. Okay, we need to be careful in terms of now hiring numbers. So we have lessons learned. Yeah, but we also found out, wow, there are definitely good talent available outside Japan, so we just continue. So that's for sure.
Tez, what about you? Is there anything you look back on and say that was a stupid mistake, but I learned a lot from it?
Oh yes. Yes. The second engineer in our company was French, and my mistake was I demanded him to be very punctual.
Yeah.
But
That's impossible.
Yeah, so some cultures are better at that than others.
Yeah, our company were supposed to start from 10 o'clock in the morning, but he always came like 10:20, 10:30, and always complaining that train was late.
That doesn't work in Japan. Yeah.
Yeah, so I insisted you should leave earlier. That's a point. But he got angry, and we kind of argued like every week.
How long did it take before you realized that the problem was a cultural problem and not a personal problem?
Oh, still I can't figure out this is a personal problem or a cultural problem. But later on, I kind of take it easy about punctuality. So I can accept 10 minutes late if somebody...
I think I think that is really critical, especially at small startups before you get big and have processes, that you do have to kind of keep that in mind, not just about punctuality, but about anything, about going out drinking after work or about weekly meetings, because different cultures view those very differently.
Yeah, that's true. And oh yeah, I clearly found that he lived far from our office, but I live very near, like 10 minutes by walk.
So how did it end up? Did he end up coming in on time, or did you just kind of accept the fact that he's always going to be 20 minutes late to work?
Oh no, he just quit the job.
Oh. So next time, after that, you learned the lesson.
Yeah,
all right,
definitely.
Taka, what about you?
Okay, so before starting my story, we have 3 French engineers in our company, so I am the professional for working with French. And then anyways, so the mistake, I think it's kind of a not stupid mistake, but it's general mistake for seed startups. Like almost a year and a half ago, we were developing SaaS for freight forwarders, and at that time we didn't know the detailed operation of freight forwarders, and we rely on one client at that time too much, and we always ask those feedback from that client, and we really started to find the MVP. At that time, so we couldn't find the MVP for SaaS, for freight forwarders. Then what happened was that we couldn't say no because we have only one client,
Right.
and our product team is really frustrated because we not only product team but also whole team couldn't explain what's the MVP for our company, minimum variable product, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it must have felt like you're implementing your one client's vision rather than the team's vision.
Yeah. So that's why. Yeah.
So how did that work out?
Finally, we just started to provide actual logistics, and we ran a lot of operations, and finally we got the license of freight forwarders from Japanese government, and we started digital freight forwarding, kind of.
So mostly just sticking through it, and
yeah.
All right. Listen, I want to make sure that we have enough time for everyone to ask questions afterwards. So what I want to do is I want to just ask, relatively briefly, if there is one key piece of advice that, wait a minute, I don't think I asked Jordan that question, did I? I know you've screwed up. We've talked about it.
Yeah. So I've learned a lot. I continue to learn a lot every day. So I think one of the best parts of doing a startup. I think in the context of, HR and recruiting, at the very beginning of the company, finding your co-founders, finding your earlier employees is really, you kind of get to know people, right? You go out, you drink, and you become friends, and it's kind of like dating, right? And you get to know each other better and better, and you're like, oh, let's start and let's do this together. And I think for the first several employees, that was actually fine, right? Those were our cultural co-founders, to say. And after that, the problem was we started to raise a little bit of money. We started to actually hire via other channels other than just introductions. But it was still a very kind of casual introduction. Oh, does this make sense? Is this what you want to do? Is this what we want to do? Do the stars align? And I think we had a very laissez-faire approach to recruiting. Obviously, we wanted to work with the best people, and we knew that culture was very important. But we had this idea of just a trial period. So I was like, oh, well, you come by after work, we'll get together on the weekends and we'll make it, and we'll see if it's a good fit or not. And I think we quickly learned that there was importance of, currently at Mercari, of having these kind of core competencies well defined, right? What do we actually value? What is our culture? Actually defining that. I think as we became kind of from 10 to 30 people, that was really a point where having that better defined really helped us make the right hires and also helped attract the right people in the first place, right? So making it clear, yes, we are a meritocracy. Yes, we are maybe the opposite of a lot of Japanese companies, even though we're going after this, this space in Japan. So I think what we really learned was just, despite many startups not liking process, that there is, it's important to have the right amount of process, especially
So
when it comes to
don't be
hiring.
scared of documenting the processes.
Yes, yeah. I think there's many good things that you don't need to learn time and time again in terms of hiring, and hiring isn't something that necessarily scales without process, right? If you want it for 10 different people to interview somebody and to be able to come back with a similar, scorecard fit, how do they fit when it comes to ownership or teamwork or problem solving? I could interview and have those questions and have an idea, but maybe somebody else would have a different idea if that wasn't a process. So as much as I hate process, I think that we need to learn that some processes helps us not have to other others.
All right. Well, listen, before we open it up to Q&A, what I do want to get from each of you is if there was just one or two core pieces of advice that you could give to other startup founders or other people running startups that they need to understand in order to build a functional team, to build a successful team, what would that advice be? And Tatsuo, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah. So I think the one keyword which is trust. Right? So this is the most important things we need to do to understand each other with a different background, and then to create trust. Like when we do like onboarding, we do like a mentorship program, like a buddy program. We do a culture orientation, and also we do a more data-driven approach. Okay, in terms of like a Japanese or non-Japanese, okay, how much their engagement score is different or not different. So we can kind of gauge how much trust the people have to the company or to the manager or to the group associated. But we really are glad so far in terms of like a retention rate or pulse survey, anything, non-Japanese, Japanese, there is no difference.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
that's why, and also it's a quite high engagement organization. That's why I'm so confident. There is a high level of trust in the organization, and we like to keep it. Yeah.
Okay. Jordan, you just made a great point about process. You want to stick on that one, or
I think
put
I'll
it double
deviate.
on red?
Yeah. So I think culture is very important. The people that you hire, I mean, some of the most important decisions that you make are the members that you hire. And I think just the one thing I would say is it's very easy when you're trying to go fast and you have a lot of targets you're trying to hit to rush and make hiring decisions. But it's never in your best interest long term. And so I would just say that if the right hire is not there, instead of compromising on your qualities in a hire, is to find some other way to band-aid the process or to use a consultant or use someone external as you figure out what you do need, right? And I think we've done that a few times in terms of saying, hey, we don't know what we need in an HR person, hence we'll hire a few people as part-time consultants. So we have right now we have a part-time happiness manager, a part-time shadoshi, and a part-time internal recruiter. And that's helped us understand exactly what we need in those roles as we go after our first full-time HR director. And so, I don't think... Yeah, just never compromise on your values when it comes to hiring, because those are other people will join the organization because of the people in the company. So you will want to have the best people that represent your culture.
Excellent. That makes a lot. I like that idea of hiring part-time until you find that perfect fit. Excellent. Tez, what would you advise?
Well, in the end, I think communication is a key to work with other people. So to do that, I think we should have a good place, or in other words, field to directly say something in their mind. In our case, we communicate eating takoyakis, which are cooked by our robots. So,
Oh, wow.
and soft serve ice cream. Our robots cook takoyaki, soft serve ice cream, and some other things are coming. So I think it is very, very important to have such place, not outside of the company, but inside the company. We can communicate very relaxingly and enhance communication.
Yeah, so let people talk to each other outside of the normal working roles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Taka?
Yeah, same as Tatsu. I think I think over communication is really key to build a great team. And to achieve those over communication, I think, like for example, our culture is one of the key to achieve those over communication, because we hire basically only strong people, kind of strongness, because if people are afraid to get the feedback or to feedback things, then there's no communication. So our people, like even Japanese, they always can say stop or no, or ask the question if they don't understand. Just ask and discuss the topics or epics, and yeah.
Yeah, so to get people, make sure they're willing to talk and comfortable talking in the first place.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, listen, I want to give all our panelists a big round of applause. And let's open it up for Q&A. Do we have someone running a microphone? We do? Excellent. So hands up and a microphone will run your way. Right in the back. We're making a run way across the room.
Hi, thank you for the microphone. My name is Raymond from Raymond Capital. I'm currently setting up offices with contractors in New York, Austin, San Francisco, and Tokyo. As I'm finding that my technology background is not coming into play and more of my people management skills are coming into play. And as I'm working with not only a diverse set of skills with different languages, I'm also working with different regions. So not only there's time difference, but let's say like the guy in California, because he's surfing at Huntington Beach, is 10 minutes late to the meeting, I got to deal with that. Meanwhile, the guy in New York is joining the crew team for Colombia, and this is even though he's on contract, he's working part-time on this. And the Tokyo guy here is on time to every meeting. He's doing all the work we need to. The quality we're still working on, the language we're bridging. It's super diverse. So I've implemented policies that have only been applied to certain regions. And at some points, I've had to reverse those policies because I get conflict because it's very diverse. My question is, was there ever a policy that you had to reverse in order to deal with scale that you have to go back on? How did you handle it as a businessmen of yourselves?
So a policy directly related to kind of the multicultural aspect of different teams. So, Tez, do you want to answer that? Because it sounds like you've got the most direct experience on how to best handle. So you talked about one employee who had different ideas than you did about certain policies. But have you been in a situation where you've had like a functional team where everyone has different ideas, and how would you handle that?
Oh, it's difficult to answer, but I think too much punctuality for foreigners very risky. So, well, yeah. Right now, we are fortunately scaling, growing. So we have been focusing on speed, like fail fast, fail forward, something like that. But now, since we make robots to work, so this robot shouldn't be dangerous or unreliable. So now we have to make sure the robot is safe and work reliably, and sometimes we have to work very slowly, deliberately. I think that's one thing we are now.
So I guess it sounds like it's sort of case by case. Sometimes it's okay to be flexible and back off the policy, but sometimes, like in terms of the quality assurance you're talking about, you just really need to enforce those policies and make it work. Excellent. Does anyone else? Yeah. Go ahead.
Just chime in quickly. So I think I'm, despite having to make culture, structure sometimes, I'm very generally anti-rule to begin with. And I think when you have a very small organization, I think the most important thing is that for every person, how are they going to be measured in terms of their performance? How are they going to decide if you're going to continue to hire them or if you're going to give them a pay raise or anything else like that? And I would be very strict on that and not as strict on other things that aren't going to make as much of a difference, especially if there's only one person in each location. Probably if you could create endless policies. You can create like when we had to make our Shugo Kisoku in Japan, which is like your rule book after 10 people, like we consulted multiple people, everyone was like 60 to 70 pages on average. And we fought to make it 1 page because you could have endless rules, but if nobody knows what they are and they're not actually going to contribute to people performing better, then there's no actual real purpose to them. So my advice would just be, as much as possible, just ask yourself for every policy and rule, does that help that person hit that performance metric? And if it's a must, like something like safety, etc., then have that in place. But if it's a nice to have, then have that just be a suggestion or idea and make it clear how they are going to be evaluated from a performance perspective. We're very much a meritocracy, and we tell people that we're very strict when it comes to the numbers and the performance, but we're not strict on pretty much everything else.
Answer my question. I like the answer. Thank you.
Actually, Mercari follows that principle last 6 years. Yeah, and really minimum rules. Yeah. So, and then I think it's great, more flexibility and also more freedom, and because it's based on trust, right? I think the most important thing is, the psychological safety. Every employee, must have. And that creates more openness, more innovations, more perform. And then the most important thing is, I think you should be outcome driven, right? So if everybody needs to contribute and outcome driven, I think you can have a definitely type of message to deliver. But definitely how to work, it should respect each other and should be more flexible about it.
Excellent. Great. Next question. In the back, in the red.
You talked about bringing 30 or 20 or 30 people from India and then dealing with all their visas and everything. My question is, in this day and age, why would you bring somebody all the way, uproot them and bring to your own country when you can do all this? Most of the development stuff you can do remotely. So did you try that? Didn't you try that? If you try it, what were the drawbacks? And if you didn't try it, why didn't you try it? And secondly, another question which you have partially actually answered, actually reversed your position. You said that you said processes, and you're very strict with the processes. But in answering the other gentleman, you said, the gentleman next to you, actually he said that he have minimum processes, rules. So at first he had suggested that these are strict processes. They are rules, but what he's suggesting now that those rules are actually frameworks, and they fluctuate as depending upon the KPIs that registered by an individual worker or contributor, you would say. So they are rules, but they are in evolution. How do you judge those evolution? How do you determine that the evolution is going in a positive direction? Thank you.
Okay, let me answer quickly.
Yeah.
So for second questions, no, I didn't say strict
Yeah,
rules.
that's actually
Yeah.
towards him.
All right,
Yeah.
got it. So it's more like when Mercari is scaling up the organization, I think we need more structure. Yeah, we need to the guiding principle. So that's what I said. First questions. No, I think we considered of course we can remote location type of the organization, but we believe to create a culture to share the common values. We need to work together more face to face, and after we build trust, maybe it's more easier to work remotely. So that's kind of our basic principle we currently have. So maybe in the future, maybe we consider, but right now we kind of like to spend our time within the same working environment and create one product with a mission base. Yeah.
So do the other panelists share the same opinion? Have they tried remote developers or project management teams or something like that?
I'll I'll actually throw out my own experience, but I want to have time for just one more question. My own experience has been that remote teams are less productive than on-site teams, and the best way to get remote site teams productive is you've got to keep bringing ambassadors to the main headquarters. Otherwise, they get disconnected. So it's possible, but it's another layer of administration on top of it. But we've got time for one more.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. We really have time for one more question. Yes, up in front. I'm making our mic person really run all over the place here.
As the mic comes, I would just say to take a look at the Netflix Culture Guide. They talk about how the process increases as the as a way to combat complexity, but how that's not really a great idea in the long term lots of times. We can talk later.
Thank you. So I'm Zineb. I'm French, and against all odds, apparently, I show up on time and maybe 10 minutes ahead of everyone. So I work at LK Consulting, and I've been recruited as a life science specialist because I'm an academician, a researcher. And my concern is, I have been, as you mentioned, like for software engineers, I've been hired as specialists, but I can see sort of glass ceiling, but in going in upper management, middle management, and high management, because you need to manage Japanese people at some point, right? And isn't it true that this is a barrier for non-bilingual talent?
I'm particularly interested in what our Japanese startup founders have to say about this. So do you think that a foreign hire could become a CEO or COO level or a very senior position in your organization? Or do you think that would require, practically, do you think that would require native Japanese?
Let me answer that question quickly because, for example, our CTO Ugo, he will make a pitch later, but he's one of our management team, and he actually manages Japanese people right now. So I think it's possible.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we already have some non-Japanese managers leading the engineering team, including Japanese talent. So there is no any difference. Yeah.
It just depends on the role and function, right? We'd probably never have a head of sales that doesn't speak Japanese. But
that's one point, right?
Yeah, I think you get to a point where you can be presentable in another language, or you can be able to represent the company and their hiring needs. It's probably the point you need to get to.
But I think all of Japan is changing that way. In my own role, so I'm also CTO of TEPCO Ventures. As a foreigner in a very conservative Japanese company, it's fine. You have to be able to communicate in Japanese and play all the Japanese roles you're required to, or at least make a good effort to do so. But it's very open.
Even we have a non-Japanese manager without the Japanese language fluency. Yeah. So that's we just have more of those cases.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, listen, there is never enough time to answer everyone's questions, but all of us are going to be hanging around for a little bit, so you can corner us around the room and ask any follow-up questions you like. But let's give our panelists another huge round of applause. And thanks very much.